Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. We're just gonna chat today. I feel like we haven't done this in a very long time where I just sit down here and we chat about different things, all book related things. I do feel like there is just so much happening in the book community right now and there's just a lot to talk about. So I thought we would do that today. I honestly have been working at creating all of these different book rec videos, like with different themes and everything. And when I was planning yesterday on which book rec video I was gonna film today, I was like, you know what? I don't feel like doing any of those right now. So instead of giving you book recs, I just asked you guys over on Instagram yesterday about, I don't know, different topics you'd want me to talk about, different bookish hot takes and things that you'd like me to offer my opinion on. And so that's just what we're going to be doing today. We're just going to be talking about book stuff in general. I have my tea with me today. Honestly, it's like almost done and it is cold. But nonetheless, it is still tea. So I don't know, grab a snack, grab your own beverage, get cozy. We're just gonna yap today. Now, when I asked you about things you'd want to hear me talk about, the topic that came up the most was anything to do with controversial authors, canceling authors, whether or not you should support authors that you agree with politically, etc. This is such a big topic, so I feel like we're going to be here for a little bit on this first one. But in terms of canceling authors, I just don't like cancel culture in general. I think it starts from a good place, you know? It starts from a place where, you know, if someone feels hurt, if someone feels misunderstood, obviously it's very reasonable to not want to support an author or a public figure or whatever who really seems to go against things that you stand for. So I think, you know, where it starts is not wanting to support problematic, so-called problematic people. And that makes complete sense to me. There are authors who I have decided not to support myself. And so this side of it, I completely understand. And I think that spot where you draw your line personally definitely differs from person to person. Some people are definitely a lot more comfortable with separating the art from the artist. Some people don't believe that at all. And I think it's completely reasonable and fair for everyone to have a different level of comfort with that. So where I stand on it is that I myself, you know, I know myself. I know who I want to support. I know who I don't want to support, but I would also, for most cases. There are definitely some exceptions, obviously, but for the most part, I don't judge people who read books from authors that I have decided not to read myself. Cancel culture, however, takes it a whole step further. So instead of not just supporting someone, it goes an extra step further to be like, we need to wipe this person off the face of the planet, essentially, and convince the entire world never to buy whatever product from them ever again. We need them off social media. We need their online presence, you know, basically demolished. And with just the nature of social media, I mean, I don't think this is a new idea by any means, but I do think as an online society, we have become too quick to just immediately jump to the cancel option. A lot of the time I have seen these outrage cancel campaigns waged on people or authors who have said one thing maybe like 10, 15 years ago. And I feel like that can be unfair a lot of the time because people grow, people change, people are allowed to make mistakes. And on the other hand, I mean, quite recently, I think most people who are on book social media these days are aware of the recent R.F. Kuang drama. And in cases like that, in my opinion, that is an example of taking one thing that was said out of context and then kind of twisting it and exaggerating it. And I think that can be really harmful as well. And the thing is, I mean, in the case of R.F. Kuang, I mean, I've followed her on social media for a very long time. I still do, but I think she is one of the most outspoken people out there in terms of things that she supports politically. And I think she does a great job at raising awareness for certain causes. And I think this one line that was taken from an art copy of her new book that's coming out was, I don't know, I mean, I haven't read the arc. I don't have the art copy, so I haven't read the complete book. All I've seen is the one page that was like leaked or whatever. In my personal experience, after reading that one page, it wasn't really enough to speak to, I don't know, like the point R.F. Kuang was trying to make with including that in her book. And just knowing, I don't know, the context of R.F. Kuang and the things that she stands for and the things that she normally writes about. I think what we have to remember is just because an author includes something in their book doesn't mean they support that. And again, knowing what R of Kuang stands for, knowing what she typically writes in her books, there's definitely a bigger point that she was trying to make while including this quote or this line on this page in her book. And I think especially with this being an ARC copy, it's very possible that there was a point she tried to make that just didn't come across as clear as she meant it to. Maybe it was very clear in her mind, but this ARC reader who read her book just didn't get the point. And that honestly might have just been a mistake, might have been a case of unclear writing. And that's one of the main purposes for sending out ARCs, is to have readers give honest feedback with the hopes that things like this that may come across as unclear would be fixed in the published version. I do also just think, I feel like we're going way off track with this right now, but this whole thing with R of Kuang shouldn't have even happened to begin with, because there is a rule, and it's not even an unspoken rule, it's a very clear rule, where if you're an ARC reader, you're not supposed to be sharing direct quotes from the book. And as someone who receives a lot of ARCs myself, I do know this as a fact. Every single ARC copy that I receive, whether it's physical, whether it's digital, always has, you know, an explicitly stated rule where they say don't share direct quotes from this book unless you've had approval from the publisher, because they need to check if this quote is going to be in the final published copy before you can go out and like share, I guess, unfinished quotes from things. You know what? I actually have an ARC here beside me that I'm currently reading. So this is just one example. You can see it here. They're always placed right at the beginning of ARC copies, but this says, material from this copy should not be quoted or used without first checking with the publisher, as some of this material may not appear in the finished book. And I could grab every single one of the ARCs I own and they will all say the exact same thing. So the first issue in this case, I guess, is the ARC reader not really following the expectations of what you should be doing as an ARC reader. But you know, things got out, word got out. You can't really stop the flow of information once it hits the internet. So in terms of how to deal with something like this when it does happen, I just think, I don't know, I think things are blown way out of proportion a lot on the internet. I do on one hand completely understand why some people were confused at this quote, why some people were hurt about this quote. And so for anyone who, I don't know, wanted to message R of Kuang directly or comment on one of her posts asking for clarification, you know, saying things like, oh, I'm just confused at this. Can you clarify, confirm what you meant by including this quote in your book? I think stuff like that is completely reasonable, but what I think it turns into online very easily, very quickly, and very naturally with a lot of people is that it does turn into bullying. It does turn into nasty comments. And a lot of the time when this happens, the, I don't know, angry people speak up a lot more than, I guess, the cool level-headed people. And so when you look at a comment section, a lot of the time you'll have like 20 just like bullying hate comments for every one actual helpful comment. And as someone who has been, you know, sort of piled on the internet with negative comments on certain posts, I do understand how it feels to be hated on the internet, having thousands of notifications and messages come into you every single day of people just saying nasty things and incorrect things about you. And I think we've seen with a lot of public figures that have been canceled or in the middle of a cancel session, I don't know what we want to call it. I think it is completely reasonable for someone to turn off their comment section. And I did see a lot of people also getting angry at R of Kuang for like limiting her comments, turning off her comment section, being disappointed. But I don't know, personally, as someone who does have somewhat of a social media presence, I am in no way as impactful or powerful as R of Kuang is. But I don't know, I completely understand the want to turn off comments. Also, we have to take into account that R of Kuang most definitely has a team of publicists who are working with her, and maybe they advised her to turn her comments off as they tried to figure out behind the scenes how to address the issue. It's definitely something tricky, and it's definitely something I think that we overall as like a group of people, a society, are trying to figure out with social media and how to handle it and how to handle the line between trying to be productive and holding people accountable versus it turning into just a big hate bullying spree. And I don't know, I myself think about this topic in the lens of a viewer and also as someone who is on social media. So again, I definitely see both sides of it, but just I know that there are well-meaning people out there that just want to have good conversation, that just want to talk to people about certain difficult topics. And I think that is so important. but with a lot of, the good eggs out there also come a lot of bad eggs that just jump on the bandwagon, and that's where the problem is, and that's where the big issue with cancel culture is. That was, I think, a really roundabout way of just saying I don't agree with cancel culture for the most part. I think some people definitely deserve it, like people who repeat harmful behaviors over and over and over and over again, like, yeah, maybe some people do deserve a little bit of a canceling, but for the most part, I do think people just jump to conclusions too quickly on the internet these days. All right, I did see some questions about what I feel about marketing every book as a romantasy. Yeah, this is definitely something I've been thinking about a lot. I was actually talking to Mughal Rana, who is the author of Dawn of the Firebird. First of all, she is just a very lovely person. I did read her book last year, and then we had her on the podcast. And then since then, we've kind of become friends, which is wonderful. But every time I see her, we do talk a lot about things that are happening in author circles, things that are happening in the publishing industry. And she definitely has some experience with this in terms of marketing books as romantasies and her thoughts on them. So her book in particular, Dawn of the Firebird, is a gorgeous book in terms of cover design, in terms of aesthetic. It's beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful books I've ever seen. I love it so much. And the genre of her book is high fantasy. I would even say grimdark fantasy. I think she also describes her book that way, but there has been some disconnect, I think, with reception of her book because a lot of people see this beautiful cover and they see, a female author name and immediately everyone thinks romantasy. But when you dive into her book, like there's not really romance. There's maybe tiny crumbs at most, but it's very much a high dark fantasy. And it's such a bizarre situation because I think every genre deserves pretty colors. And when I see her book, I don't immediately think romantasy because I have also read high fantasies also with beautiful covers, but I think just in this day and age, we're all just very used to seeing a certain aesthetic with the romantasy genre. So if you don't read the back of the book, if you don't look a little bit more into it, I can see how easy it might be to feel confusion with that. And I think Sarah's book has, reached a romantasy audience versus a dark fantasy audience. And there's just a little bit of disconnect with reader expectations on what they think they're going into before diving into her book. So there's all of that. But then when I think about it, when I think back to, my experience reading her book, and then I compare it to the cover, her cover of her book actually really matches what is in the inside of the book. It's not romantic, no, but it is beautiful. Her prose is very poetic, it's lyrical, her world is very filled with culture, and with the culture there is this really beautiful bright imagery. And so in terms of actual vibe and aesthetic, I think her cover of her book really matches what is inside, but she has actually received a lot of comments and messages from people saying, hey, you know what, I think your book should be black, like darker in colors. I think the vibrant colors don't really match your book. I feel like I've rambled on again. I don't really know what point I was trying to make with this. But that's just, I guess, an interesting side of things. Another interesting book example, I guess, that comes to mind is The Poet Empress by Shen, which is a book that you guys know I absolutely love. And the thing with The Poet Empress is it's been published under an imprint that is known primarily for romantasy books. And honestly, I don't know why or how that happened. I'm actually going to chat with Shen very soon on the podcast. And so I actually do want to ask her about this, in how, this imprint specifically decided to publish her book when they publish mostly romantasy, and then how they chose to brand the book. I think on Goodreads, a lot of fantasies are also labeled as romantasy, probably just because the tag is popular. I don't know, but it's something I do want to ask publishers about, ask authors about, because especially with The Poet Empress, something like that with the plot synopsis, you could totally see it going in a romantasy direction. But when you read the book, you realize it's really not a romantasy. So yeah, all that to say, I do think marketing every book as a romantasy is definitely a problem these days and is definitely something confusing. I want to get to the bottom of it. I am hoping to chat with Shen a little bit about this in our podcast episode, so hopefully we get some answers there. Let's move on to a little bit of a lighter topic next. So this one is a question, and it says tips for buddy reading when you're much faster than your buddy. You know what? I probably am not the best person to ask about this because I'm terrible at buddy reads because yeah, again, I do read faster than the average reader, and so I just speed ahead, and I'm the worst to buddy read with because I will be done the book before my buddy actually starts it. This actually happened recently with Dungeon Crawler Carl. I was supposed to read it with one of my friends and she just texted me one day. She's like, okay, when are we gonna read Dungeon Crawler Carl? And I was like, oh, actually I already read it. So I myself am terrible at buddy reading, and apart from just, I don't know, book clubs and reading a book within a month with a group of people, I honestly don't buddy read that much because of this one reason. I think honestly, if you are wanting to buddy read a book with someone else who has a very different reading pace, set a schedule. You know, be like, let's read 5 chapters a week, and it might take a long time for both of you to read this one book, but you could, I guess, just read other books alongside with it and just spread this one book out and make sure you actually stick to the schedule. Honestly, to me, that doesn't sound really fun because again, like I like to read at my pace. I like to devour books. I don't really like to read multiple books at the same time as well. So I just think buddy reading is not really for me, but my best advice coming from someone who you probably shouldn't listen to in terms of a buddy reading topic is to, just make a really well-defined schedule and try to actually stick to it. This next one is also a question. It's death in fantasy novels. What is considered a good ending? I mean, you guys know me. I love a good sad fantasy book with a bittersweet ending where a significant character, whether it's like a significant secondary character or even our main character, like when they die at the end of the book, I love it as long as it's done well and as long as it has purpose and meaning. I think that's the main thing. I love fantasies where everyone stays alive. I love fantasies where everyone dies. It just has to make sense. I probably have read books in the past where we've had a main character death that didn't make sense to me, and I was just like, okay, now I'm just completely unsatisfied by this. But when there is a book that comes up and the main character dies, but you can see why they had to, and you can see the impact of it, and you can see, I don't know, there's no other real good way out of this. I think that can be so powerful, and I think that can add up to an incredible, perfect fantasy ending. So I am not going to bring up specific examples because obviously that would spoil the end of a lot of books if I was like, yeah, this main character dies in this fantasy book and that main character survives in that fantasy book. That's no fun. We don't want to spoil the endings of books. But what I think is considered a good ending is just a meaningful ending. Like, it has to make sense. It has to have a message at the end of the day. It has to tie up the plot points. It has to tie up the themes that have been present throughout the entire book. And as long as all of those bases are covered, I think you can have a good ending whether your character dies or survives by the end of it. A character does have to have hardships though. Like, if a character survives and just has a great time and is completely overpowered in a fantasy book, that's not fun to read. You want to see your character struggle at least a little bit, at least a lot, for the payoff to be good at the end of the story. So that's my opinion on that. Okay, we have a hot take here next. It says, if you read a series and want to buy the physical books, I guess afterwards, I guess if you've read it, whether on digital or audio, this person is saying, if you want to buy the physical copies afterwards, I guess as trophies, just buy the ones you like. I mean, I don't really have strong opinions on this. I'm always in the boat that you buy whatever books you want to. If you want to buy a copy of every book you've ever read, go for it. If you want to buy multiple copies of the same book because you've loved it so much, go for it. If you want to buy just the books you've liked, and if that means that you're going to have an incomplete series on your shelf, go for it. It's not affecting me. It's not affecting me whatsoever. In terms of if it's something I would do, I don't think I would do it purposefully, but it has happened just kind of by accident due to, unforeseen circumstances where I do actually have some incomplete series on my shelves. It usually ends up being either I only have the first book in a series or I only have the rest of the series and I don't have the first book. Like that's the only one I don't have, because sometimes what happens is that either I will read a physical copy of the start to a series and then I'll only read digital copies for the rest of the series and I just won't go out and buy the rest, or I will read the first book on digital because I don't know, I'm just testing it out, will fall in love with it, and then I'll buy the rest of the series on physical to read in a physical copy. There was like the Greenbone saga, for example. I read Jade City on my Kindle and then I got Jade War and Jade Legacy in physical, and for the longest time, for like several months, I just had the second and third books in the series on my shelf, and only recently for my birthday, my sister actually bought me the new edition of Jade City to have on my shelf. So now I have a complete set, but it's also not really a complete set because they're different editions of the series, so they don't even really match. But I think, I don't know, I've gotten over overthinking whether or not I have a complete set of books on my shelf. I don't think it matters as much to me anymore these days. Mistborn is actually one that I only have the first book of because then I read the second and third books on my Kindle, and that one is one that I've just never felt like I've needed to go and pick up the second and third books in physical. So honestly, I support it. If it's something that you want to do for yourself, then yeah, just buy the books that you actually liked in the series and don't buy the ones you didn't like. But also, if you do want to buy the whole complete series, also go for it. If you want to buy 2 complete sets of the series, go for it. If you have the funds, if you have the means, if you have the space for it, it doesn't bother me either way. I'm unsure if this next one is a hot take or if it's just like something that you want my opinion on, but it says reading winter books in summer and vice versa. I mean, I've definitely done it before. I've definitely read like a beach book in the winter and I've definitely read a cold book in the summer. Do I do it on purpose though? Probably not. I think I do, for the most part, try to stay a little bit seasonal with books, in the sense that there are certain books that I'll be like, yeah, I do want to pick this one up now. I think with a lot of summer romances, I definitely try not to read those in the winter, and then I think with holiday Christmassy reads, I just don't feel the want or urge to pick those ones up in the summer at all. So I think to a certain degree, I do try to keep my books seasonal. But then there are also genres and things that I can read all year round. I do know some readers who really stick to like, I only read high fantasy in the winter, I only read romance in the summer. And I definitely don't, go to those lengths. I definitely read fantasies all year round. I love a good school setting in the fall, but if I'm gonna read a school setting in spring, I don't mind. But where I do draw the line is like reading a Christmas romance in the summer. I don't think I would ever want to do that. But that's also a very personal thing, and a big factor in that is probably just the fact that I've realized for myself I don't actually love a Christmas holiday romance. I've been trying to read like at least one a year every winter season, and every time I read one I'm like, this doesn't really do much for me. They're all just kind of very average to me. Like, they're fine, they're easy to read, and in the winter, they're digestible, they're doable, and sometimes they do get me into the Christmas spirit, but because I'm just not a huge fan of that genre, I would never just randomly pick it up out of season. But you know what? If a book is good, it'll be good all year round. It won't matter when you pick it up. If a book is truly good, it will be good whenever you decide to read it. Okay, here's another hot take. I'm okay with an epilogue. What I don't like is a prologue. We are opposites, my friend. We are complete opposites. I mean, I think most of you know at this point, I am not a fan of an epilogue. The thing is, though, there are epilogues that are incredible, and I don't think a story would feel fully complete without the epilogue. And in that way, when epilogues are done correctly, I think epilogues are amazing. They give you all the conclusion you need. If you're feeling just kind of scattered at the end of a book, an epilogue can really tie things up together for you. It's mostly romance epilogues that I don't understand. I don't need to get a really quick montage of our couple getting married, having a baby, living their happily ever after. It doesn't bring me joy. I think a lot of people with romance books, if you get attached to a character, I understand. I can see that it could be fun just seeing your characters exist and be happy. But when I'm reading, I don't know, I like to find meanings in the stories that I read and in the books I partake in. So when an epilogue is just, there for feel good vibes, they usually just feel a little bit purposeless to me. But a prologue, I don't think I've ever read a prologue where I'm like, this didn't have to be here. I think for me, I don't know, it always either is a great way of introducing you to the world. Like if it's a fantasy world, it's a great way to give you an overview and feeling and mood and vibe about the world. Some prologues even give you a lot of world building on how the world was created. I'm thinking of like When the Moon Hatched in particular. That prologue gave you the story of the creation of the world, and I loved it and immediately pulled me in. Also, something like The Night Circus, that prologue was incredible, where you get a first-hand point of view of what it feels like to enter the circus, and it just puts you right into the mood that you're supposed to be in and that you need to be in for the story. It can also introduce you to characters. There are some prologues that kind of give you a glimpse of what is to come in the book, you know what I mean? Like it gives you a certain scene in the third act of the book, but out of context, and it won't make sense until you've like read the book and then you get to that point again, and then it hits so hard when you get to that point again and you're like, oh, this was the excerpt in the prologue, and that's exciting. So I don't know. I don't think I've ever read a prologue where, I've been like, we don't need this, we didn't need this. So I'm gonna have to disagree with you, my friend. But if you're here, let me know in the comments. Please expand for me, because if there's a prologue in particular that you're thinking of that you're like, we didn't need this, I didn't like it, please let me know. I would love to honestly chat with you about this because I'm so curious. I did actually get a couple questions on cosmere reading order. Okay, I'm gonna try and do my best here, and this is actually a topic that I don't bring up a lot because I honestly still feel like I'm not the biggest expert in the cosmere. I think I've read 10 or over 10 books in the cosmere at this point, but still, you know what? Maybe I've read 12. Should I count them? They're behind me. Okay, there's Tress, there's Mistborn ×3, Yumi, Warbreaker. I've read one short story from the Arcanum Unbounded. Does that count? I still have to read more in that collection. I've read the 5 Stormlight books. Is that all of them? I guess that must be all of them. Oh no, then I've read the Stormlight novellas, Dawn Shard and Edge Dancer. So I've read 13 cosmere books, which sounds like a lot. And you would think, oh, well, you've read 13 books, you should be able to speak on reading order. But I don't know, I feel like this universe is so intense, and there are readers that are so intense about it that they could probably speak a lot better to reading order than I could. If you're the type of person that wants to pick up on every single Easter egg, there are very defined reading orders out there, and if you do a quick Google search, you'll be able to find them. I've definitely looked into a bunch of them, but I also think that you could just read them in any order you want, really. Like, does it really matter? All of his books and series, I think, hold up on their own. I think the only reason to want to care about the overall reading order in detail is, just if you want every little Easter egg, but I think that's honestly a little bit unnecessary. That being said, though, I do think there are some books that you should definitely read before others. For example, Warbreaker, I think you should most definitely read before at least Words of Radiance in the Stormlight Archive. You could probably, if you want to read Warbreaker before starting the Stormlight Archive, that's probably a great decision because there is a lot of overlap there. There is definitely overlap with Mistborn, and I definitely noticed some of that while reading the Stormlight Archive. But all that to say, there are definitely a lot of Easter eggs and overlap and things that I've missed because I have read some of the cosmere in the wrong order, but in my opinion, it hasn't really affected me. You know what I mean? I've still gotten a lot out of all of his stories. I've still enjoyed his books. So overall reading order, honestly, may be controversial. I don't think it's completely necessary to follow the exact reading order where it's so particular. It's not even like read the series before this series, which is a reading order rule that I can get behind. But when it's like read book 1 in this series, then book 1 in that, then books 2 and 3 in this one, then jump back over to this one, and then start this series and go back to series 2 and read book 4. Like, it just gets too complicated that, I don't know, for me, sometimes that takes out the fun in it. Sometimes I just want to be like, why can't I just read the Stormlight Archive and not jump back to Mistborn Era 2 before I finish the Stormlight Archive? I don't know. I, at this point, honestly don't even know if I care to read Mistborn Era 2. Mistborn was a fine series for me. It was okay. I enjoyed it. I didn't completely love it. And I think with just the mood and the era that I've heard Arc 2 is in the Mistborn series, I just don't know if it's for me. I don't know. I feel no pull to read Mistborn Era 2. And as someone who is reading through the Cosmere, I feel like a lot of Cosmere readers will gasp at that and, I don't know, shake your fists at me. But at this point in time, I have no real urge to pick up Mistborn Era 2. I think my next reads in the Cosmere will probably be maybe, yeah, more of the short stories in the Arcanum Unbounded. I definitely want to pick up The Emperor's Soul. I've heard really good things about that one. I could maybe do like Mistborn Secret History, things like that. And then I've had a lot of recs from you guys to pick up The Sunlit Man, because a lot of you have told me that there are a lot of Wind and Truth connections to that one. And then I want to also pick up Elantris. But if you are looking to get into the Cosmere, I would say don't overthink it. If you're looking for a starting point, Mistborn, I think, is the most common starting point. It's great to give you a good look at his writing style and also to introduce you to a world that is just a little bit easier to digest than the Stormlight world. The books are also shorter than the Stormlight books, so it's just a little bit less intimidating that way. So I think Mistborn is a great way to jump in. I also honestly think Warbreaker is a great way to jump in if you just want a standalone. That one is Brandon Sanderson's standalone that I think just gives you the most accurate view of what his writing style is like, because the rest of his standalones are a little bit more whimsical and not his usual writing style in terms of like how he writes in his big series. So I think Warbreaker is great as well. Also gives you a good idea of the mechanics of how he likes to build his magic systems. So I honestly think those are the best two jumping points into his writing, are either Mistborn Book 1 or Warbreaker. You could just dive immediately into a standalone like Tress of the Emerald Sea, but yeah, I do think like that doesn't really give you a good sense of what his writing is like. It's just a fun book to read on its own. Shall we talk about one more topic? Two more topics? I don't know. I'm just staring at my camera battery and waiting for it to run out, and that's when I'll stop talking. I did get a question that says, why are there so few fantasy standalones these days? That is one of my book recs, or like just book sit down videos that I'm planning on doing very soon. So I already have it in the works, is I'm gonna do a fantasy standalone video. So hopefully you get something out of that one. Stay tuned for it. I'm probably gonna film that one tomorrow, next week, in the next few days. I don't know. I received one that says, I don't see the issue with having a big TBR. It's not that serious. You know what? I think this is something that a lot of us need to hear. I am definitely guilty of feeling guilty of having a big TBR, and you're right. Sometimes I think on it and I'm like, why do I feel guilty about having a lot of books on my TBR, unread books? This definitely has something to do with the topic of overconsumption and how, that is a very valid concern to, see someone over-consuming things, to see someone overbuying things and feeling worried about that. But also someone else over-consuming things, overbuying things is also not affecting the person who is seeing it. Like, you could just keep scrolling if you don't like it, you know what I mean? But I do feel like because a lot of this discourse is present online, I have internalized that, and I have, started to feel guilty of having a TBR. Like, if it's over 60 books, I'm like, I feel guilty, and I apologize for it. I have caught myself doing that when I'm filming videos of like TBR takedowns and my TBR has gotten larger instead of smaller. I do feel the need to say sorry to myself, to you guys. And when I actually think deeply about it, I'm just like, why do I feel guilty about that? Like, I personally don't think I have a book buying addiction. I do read books very quickly. I do devour a lot of books within a month. So I think for me, it feels natural to have a lot of books to choose to read on my TBR. And also as someone who just receives a lot of book gifts, whether it's from publishers, whether it's from family, from friends, from you guys, I'm always so happy and grateful for every single book I receive. And I do read most of the books that I receive. Like, there will be an arc every once in a while that I receive and I'm like, this doesn't really fit me. And I never would have read this book. Like, I would never have picked it up for myself, but I received it and it does add to my TBR count. So I think whenever I feel guilty for having a big TBR, I just have to remind myself, like, hey, It's okay. Your TBR is not that big. Like if I were to not receive any books, if I were not to buy any books, I could read my entire physical TBR in, I want to say like 4 to 5 months. So honestly, in the big scheme of things, I don't think it's so bad. And honestly, I think you're right. I think we need to stop making such a big deal of feeling guilty about big TBRs. Sometimes it's just how we want to live our lives. And as long as we're not like putting all of our life savings into buying books and not having money for anything else, and buying books becoming an actual addiction, I think we're going to be okay. And I think for the most part, obviously there will be some exceptions, but I think for the most part, a lot of us are fine. Like, yeah, do we enjoy books? Yeah, do we go on like big book shopping sprees sometimes that are a little bit bigger than we should have done? Yeah, for sure. But sometimes we need to indulge for our own joy. All right, there's so much to talk about. Oh my goodness, but my battery's gonna die. Okay, I did get some questions on what I feel about readers tagging authors in reviews. I don't know why this is a thing. I mean, if you've rated a book 5 stars and you only have good things to say, yeah, for sure, tag the author. That is honestly a really great thing to do. I'm sure the author feels really wonderful seeing good reviews, like 5-star perfection reviews. But if you have anything, I don't know, critical to say, whether it was a 4-star review, a 3-star review, a 2-star review, a 1-star review, don't tag the author. Just don't. I think after getting to know some authors, specifically debut authors recently, just from interviewing them on the podcast and everything, most authors don't go on Goodreads. Most authors, in fact, have Goodreads blocked. Like they have put on a child filter for themselves to ban websites like Goodreads, because if they feel the urge one day to check Goodreads, they can't, because they have like instilled this ban on certain websites like that. And I honestly think that is such a healthy way to go about it. If you're gonna put your heart and soul into a book, why would you want to see someone's 1-star review of your book? Like that's not gonna do anything great for you. A lot of 1-star reviews also aren't helpful. Like yes, there are some helpful reviews that will actually give constructive criticism, but there are reviews that will just say this book is crap, 1 star. No explanation, no reason why, no like advice on improvement, and there's no reason for an author to see that. So if you are posting a review on social media and you tag the author directly, just don't. Unless it's a 5-star review, just don't. They don't want to see it. It's so bad for their mental health. I have seen firsthand how hard it is for them to stomach, and there really is no reason why. You know, if you do want to provide constructive criticism, leave it on a review. The authors, editors, publishers, whatever, will filter reviews for them, you know? So if there's actually something useful that you're like, oh, I'd love to see this author improve in their next book, and it is positive feedback and it is constructive, those will get through to them. Whether, yeah, it's from their publisher, their editor, whatever. Don't tag the author directly. Okay, I'm just gonna rapid fire through a couple of these. These topics probably deserve a bit of a longer rant and conversation, but we don't have time for that. So I'm gonna try and rapid fire these ones just to get to them, but not all influencer books are bad. Yes, agree. Are some influencer books bad? Yes, but can some influencer books be good? Also, yes. I think the thing is, okay, we're getting into a little bit of a mini rant here, but sometimes I feel like when you're on the internet, you get really like put into a little shoebox. You get really shoved into a corner. Like if you are an influencer, I think a lot of people just see you as an influencer. But what might be easy to forget is that this person is not just an influencer. They are a whole complete human being with lots of hobbies, lots of skills, lots of passions. And just because someone is an influencer, it doesn't mean they might not also be a great writer. They might have had a passion for writing for years and they've been writing in secret just for fun, and you don't know that, you don't see that. You also might not know an influencer is a great cook, or like you might not know that they're actually great at pottery. I don't know, I'm just throwing out random skills out there. But as people who are online, we are a lot more multifaceted than even like what you see on the internet. And as someone who, I mean, I personally think I have found a good line of where I feel comfortable in terms of what I share with you guys, what I don't share with you guys. There is a lot of life in me that I don't share on camera. Because I am a booktuber, I only really share with you my book reading side of my life. And sometimes I give you a little glimpse, like in weekly vlogs, of little tiny things I'm doing outside of reading, but there's so much that I do with my husband that I don't share, so much I do with my family that I don't share. There's a lot of time in my day where the camera is not on. And so yes, I do think an influencer can be an influencer, but at the same time, also write a good book. Okay, quickly to answer this one, it says reaction to the Harry Potter reboot. I think it's completely unnecessary. I personally am not gonna watch it. I mean, on one hand, I don't even have a lot of streaming services because they're expensive. And as someone who doesn't have loads and loads and loads of money coming in all the time, like I do need to keep strict on a budget. I don't even have Netflix right now. Like I don't have Netflix, I don't have Disney Plus, I don't have HBO or like Crave. I don't think I have any streaming services right now. So I only subscribe to a streaming service when there's a show that I want to watch specifically. Like when the next season of Severance comes out, I will subscribe to Apple TV just for Severance. And when I finish watching it, I will unsubscribe. Like I don't feel the need to subscribe to 5 different streaming services every single month just to not watch anything. So yeah, I don't have HBO Max or Crave or wherever it's going to be streamed in Canada, and I wouldn't just pay extra to watch the Harry Potter reboot. And oh my goodness, I don't think I can address this in this amount of time, but the rise in authors using AI to write their books. Honestly, for any authors who are using AI to write their books, don't. Please stop. Don't do that. It's not good. I honestly don't know if I've encountered it personally. Like, I don't think I've ever read a book and at the end of reading it, I've just thought to myself, like, this was so written by AI. I haven't really encountered that. I've definitely seen a lot of social media posts that I'm like, the way they're worded, I'm like, this caption was generated using AI, wasn't it? But in terms of books, I haven't encountered it personally. I know there has been a recent case of, I don't even remember the name of the book, but there was a book recently outed of being written by AI and they were dropped by the publisher and everything, which, you know, if that was the case and if AI was actually used to write the book, I think that was probably the right decision to make. But also I feel like it would be hard to pinpoint exactly who used AI and who didn't. Like, yes, there are certainly definitely some telltale signs of when something is written using AI. You can kind of tell from the tone of it and how things are structured. Like generative AI likes to use certain sentence structure and paragraph structure when they're generating written word. But there are also, I feel like, some authors that just write that way. And no, M dashes are not a good indicator of if someone has used AI or not, because M dashes are a real thing that writers use. But yeah, aside from that, I think it'd be hard to tell. A lot of authors mimic other authors' writing styles also, like if they've been inspired by another author, if they look up to another writer, obviously there's going to be some inspiration taken from writer to writer, from book to book, and I don't think there's going to be, you know, I feel like it's rare to see a book these days that is completely original, because like at this point, so many stories have been done before, you know? So it's a scary thing on one hand, knowing that books could be written by AI and you wouldn't know it, but it's also a scary thing to think that authors can be accused of using AI when that's just how they write. And there's like no way to prove it other than looking into their internet history. But yeah, that is a whole topic in itself. Anyways, my camera's about to die. My throat, oh my goodness, is so dry. I need more tea. You know what? I probably need more water, which is also right behind me. Oh my goodness, this tea is so cold right now. It's like ice cold. All that to say though, hope you enjoyed this little ramble. Definitely went on some tangents. Honestly, don't know if I got my points across the way I wanted them to, but that's just what happens when we do an unscripted ramble here on this channel. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know. I don't know if there are any other things you would like to see me ramble about. Let me know. Maybe if you like this video, we can do another one. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.